This is Capitol View.
And good Sunday morning to you. Welcome to Capitol View. I'm Jay Burr. You know, they always tell you around the holidays, don't debate politics. But that's why we got these guys here joining us now to debate the hot topics in the political world throughout the year here. Bill Vickery and Antwan Phillips. Guys, we appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I guess I appreciate giving people something to talk about over the holidays, right?
Exactly, exactly.
That's it, so just let them fly here. Let's jump right in here. First and foremost, I guess the biggest topic here recently is the impeachment issue. Yeah. What do you guys think, whether it be from a political and even a strategic standpoint? Because this thing is kind of unfolded in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Listen, from a political standpoint, I think ultimately it becomes a winner for the president because I think he's been able to he called it a partisan issue when it started. It was a partisan issue in the House, and it's going to be a blatantly partisan issue in the Senate.
Yeah.
And so, in some ways, by becoming even more partisan in the Senate, while that may not help individual senators, it helps the president in the long run. And I think that's what you'll see Mitch McConnell do, is that he's going to organize it in a way that it's Republicans will have a stranglehold on it. So ultimately, I think the president is able to say, see, I told you what it was, and now we get back to the business of the country and all that kind of stuff. And he can posture during the Democratic presidential primary.
Well, and I'll jump in there, and I think there may be some truth to what Bill is saying, but and I think that was the issue with the Democrats the whole time, is having concern about that. But the other issue is, at some point, do you do right because it's the right thing to do? Yeah. Or do you try to play politics and be worried about, well, what happens in the Senate when we know that's where the trial will be and we kind of know what the outcome will be? And I think there is a duty to do the right thing when there's an opportunity to do the right thing. And in this situation, there was, I think, abuse of power. And, you know, and I think people have taken that position. So you try to do the right thing and you start this process and let it play out.
But do we think does it come off as doing the right thing, with it being split down party lines so significantly?
But absolutely.
I can tell you, I think politically, if you're a Democrat and you voted for impeachment and you're in one of these swing districts, and what Antwan just said is exactly how you run for re-election. To say, look, you might not always agree with me, but I'm going to do what I think is the right thing to do. Right. In this case, I did this. And so you want to take it and drag it out of politics and say, I thought I did what I thought the right thing to do was. You can hold that against me. That's the way you run for re-election as a Democrat on this issue.
All right, moving on to that 2020 issue. Not a whole lot of hot races around here. I think the real big one is going to be French Hill and Joyce Elliott. Yeah. How do you guys kind of see that one divvying up? Because on the surface, you would think Hill's got this one locked up, but Joyce she's pretty vocal. She's out there.
She's definitely out there, and I think she has a strong support, definitely within Little Rock, definitely within Pulaski County. I think the race will be close because it's a presidential year, so I think the numbers will be higher than it was when French ran against Clark, which I think there's more. That means more people in Pulaski County, more opportunity for Joyce than what Clark had. But she's going to have to run strong in Pulaski County. You got to win, what, 75, probably 80% of Pulaski County to have a chance, and I think Joyce has the ability to do that.
Yeah, the numbers of the district certainly favor Congressman Hill. I think he's in a position where it's his race to lose, most definitely his race to lose. Something will have to happen. There'll have to be some stumble along the way between now and then. It seems like, you know, if there's not a strong Democratic candidate, if the president seems to be cruising to victory, obviously we've got a very quiet election year here. They're going to have to carry the race on their own. And that's awfully difficult for a challenger to do. He's going to be very well financed, and he is very popular in the district. And if you get outside of the city of Little Rock, he's a popular guy. So I think this would be very much a long shot candidacy for her. I have a lot of respect for the senator. She's a fine woman, but I think at the end of the day, this is a 9-to-1 in terms of odds. I really don't see this being much of a race.
I have to disagree with Bill on that point because, I mean, I'm consider Joyce a friend, and I know any politician, they're not going to run a race unless they think there's an opportunity to win. And I think there is a path to victory, and it is in Little Rock, and maybe the impeachment thing, if it plays out like everyone thinks it's going to play out, and Trump is not ultimately found convicted in the Senate, then you can use that to maybe mobilize some people in Little Rock and try to use that to propel you with a 75%, 80% victory in Pulaski County to make things interesting outside the Pulaski County.
I know another fascinating one here getting into 2020 was what we thought was going to be Josh Mahoney v. Tom Cotton. Mahoney kind of falling off the earth in essence. What do you guys make of that? Because it seems like it's very unprecedented to just kind of poof, be gone.
It was. Well, Antwan, I'll let you start.
No, go ahead.
I think that obviously caught a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah.
Listen, Tom Cotton is immensely popular in the state of Arkansas.
Yeah.
He would easily. He's better than Alabama in terms of football. He is.
That's a big compliment.
It is.
Alabama's lost a couple games though.
Yeah. He's even better than Alabama in their best year. Listen, I think he's very popular. As a Republican, I remember when David Pryor ran unopposed one year. The Republicans couldn't field a candidate at that point in time. So I just think I'm unclear as to why Josh Mahoney's out of the race.
Yeah.
The mechanics of it are bad simply because he does so the day after filing closes.
Yeah.
You know, we can speculate on that kind of stuff. But end of the day, Tom Cotton's cruising to an election no matter who he runs against.
And I think there's some, again, truth in what Bill just said there. The concern is you're still trying to build a party. As a Democrat, you still want to have a race. You want to still put forth the issues, the values that are important to people in this state that are, you know, center, left-leaning, and you don't have a person to carry that mantle in this election. And I think that's damaging to the party. But like you said, this state is a Tom Cotton state for now. Hopefully, you know, it won't be forever. But I guess they're Alabama. Alabama's lost some games, though, so maybe Democrats, maybe we're Clemson. Can we be Clemson?
Have fun in Coach Saban there, you know? Listen, I say this. It does hurt, the mechanics of this whole thing hurt the Democratic Party because there could have been one or two young guys who would have run, and in much the same way that you have to build a brand around the state, if you campaigned well, you know you're going to lose, but you build, back to the party building, you build your own sort of campaign apparatus and lose and can come back. It hurts the Democratic Party in that way. Is they don't get a chance to have a new, fresh face out there that would maybe run to lose this time, but run to win on a bigger stage later on.
Yeah, and I agree with that. You definitely want to, you know, build the bench, so to speak, and keep the talent coming through. And there was an opportunity for talent to be seen that's not.
Yeah.
All right, so there you have it. If you like that, don't go anywhere because we got plenty more of this here. We'll continue the debate after a quick break. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
Tell your story when you wear a one-of-a-kind Ronaldo design from Keepsakes. Inspiring Ronaldo bracelets symbolize your story of love, friendship, and precious memories. Shop our premier selection of Ronaldo designs for the best quality and prices at Keepsakes Jewelry.
If you're looking for the biggest deals at the end of the year, you only need to remember one name. Remember Reiser, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, the newest member of the Reiser family in Hot Springs. And right now, get Employee Pricing Plus at the Big Finish event. 10 grand off new Ram trucks, 0% financing available. Plus, shop our biggest selection of new Jeep Wranglers. Family owned and operated for 3 generations. Reiser is a name you can count on. Remember Reiser, ReiserDodge.com.
At Sanderson Farms, we wish you and your family a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
At Kroger, we're eliminating waste to zero to reduce hunger to zero. We're partnering with Feeding America to make more food donations to local food banks and with World Wildlife Fund to end food waste. But we can't do it alone, and we hope you'll join us in creating a world with zero hunger and zero waste. Visit thekrogerco.com to learn how you can help.
Magic always happens with a gift from Keepsakes. Our stunning line of Philip Gabriel, the fastest growing designer line in America, is sure to make the perfect gift. Crafted in Italy and made to share with generations to come, Philip Gabriel's now on sale. Only $299 at Keepsakes Jewelry in Whitehall.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back into Capitol View here. Let's continue the debate here. Let's get into some of the big issues from this past year. Obviously, the sin taxes were kind of a big thing. When I say sin taxes, I'm talking medical marijuana and casinos. What do you guys make of that? What do you think of the implementation? Do we see some long-term benefit from either or? Because I know the governor has come out and said that the state isn't going to make a killing off medical marijuana, and that's kind of by design, but casinos may be a little different issue.
Well, look, I think if you had told me 4 years ago I could get high and go to a casino in Arkansas, I would have.
Medically.
Correct. Sorry. Yes. For my glaucoma, I could go into it. But the reality is this: Arkansas voters have demonstrated a very independent streak here. They listened to some fairly practical arguments, and it's not as though they rushed out to the polling places to really kind of embrace all these quote sins.
Yeah.
But the reality is that you've got some folks who see them as economic generators.
Yeah.
They see it happening all around them, and so they chose to participate. It remains to be seen how much money comes in initially, especially on the medical marijuana side, because I think you're right, the governor's saying we shouldn't look at this as a revenue stream.
Yeah.
But from the casino side, I think especially in Oakland, especially in Hot Springs and over in West Memphis, a very robust place for both of those casinos, and so I think you could see a lot of revenue coming from those guys.
I think from the medical marijuana standpoint, I don't know what's considered a bunch of money, but I know about $25 million has been made in medical marijuana sales towards the end of the year. So I think that's a good chunk of change. Obviously, that's the sales and not the extra tax. But I think what it shows that our state and our citizens are ready to move forward as a state, as a unit, and not be quote-unquote left behind from the states around us, where people are leaving to go pursue other opportunities, whether it's business-wise or recreationally. You can do this in your home state. No one's making you go to the casino. You don't have to go. But if you want to go, there's opportunities for you to engage in those type of recreational activities. And I think the medical marijuana is a first step. And then before long, I think this is something that's going to change the country, across the country, where I think recreational is going to happen. Arkansas, we move a little slower.
Well, that potentially might be up on the ballot the next go-around here. So do you guys think that even has a remote chance of passing? I mean, recreational is a little different than the medical side of things.
Yes, but I think you had a big percentage of the people who showed up to vote for medical marijuana knowing that, in fact, they're voting for sort of de facto recreational marijuana, meaning, find some, the loopholes were there for you to take advantage of to go forward. So it will be interesting. It depends on a campaign that's mounted against it and the messaging that could be for it. So
I think there may be a stronger anti-recreational campaign than there was with the medical marijuana campaign. But I think we're at a point as a state and as a country where the issue of marijuana, weed, isn't as taboo, it isn't the sin that it was, 15, 20 years ago. So I'm optimistic about the chances, but I do think it's going to weigh heavily on what law enforcement and government says about the parade of horribles, if you will.
The messaging, if crafted the right way, I do think there are voters out there that would want to pursue that. It just depends on how it's pitched to the state. Absolutely.
Here, another thing that some senators have really been trying. I know Greg Leding, Will Bond have really been on this with red flag laws. It kind of seems like a very divisive issue. I think it's one of those things where people like gun safety, maybe not so much this. What do you guys think?
Well, I think I studied American politics in college, and one of the things you learn in your political philosophy classes is that we are all implied signers of the social contract, which means that I'm going to have to give up some liberty, some right that I could have as an individual for the betterment of society. And I think the red flag laws is the idea behind it. Now, obviously, execution is a different thing, but the idea that, hey, some people may be giving up a right to make the better of us all more safe and feel better about where we are and the places we go without the fear of someone engaging in a mass shooting. So in that sense, I think it's the right move. Obviously, you got to work out the mechanics. And as a lawyer, I am concerned about some due process, but there's other situations in our society where we give up a little bit of our individual right for the greater good, and I think this can be done.
The gun issue has been so divisive nationally because America's a very we are very different throughout the country. What works in New York City, what works in Chicago, what might work in East LA is very different than Wyoming or Arkansas. The terrain is different, the population is different, everything.
People are different?
People are different, yeah, very much so. So, and lifestyle and situation is very different. And we have tried from the federal level to overlay one sort of a one-size-fits-all, and that's why you see it become such a divisive issue, because it really, you live your life differently in Brooklyn than you do in Beaumont, Texas, or someplace like that. As far as here in Arkansas, it really does get into the devil is in the details. I think any responsible gun owner, any person that's out duck hunting or deer hunting, they're going to tell you they practice good gun safety. That's not the person that you have to worry about. And so I think if there's possibility here, but it has to be presented in a very sound, logical, and cogent way. You've got to be able to demonstrate how people's rights will not be violated. And at the end of the day, again, the talking points on this are big. When you see these mass shootings, when you see school shootings and things of that nature, you have to make it all about public safety and protection.
Absolutely here. Another thing, quickly, let's get through this one here. That was another one of these issues that's kind of divisive, but I think a lot of people think it makes sense. Voter ID seemed to be a real talking point this past go-around. What do you guys think here? Is there a way to do this and do it correctly?
Well, I host a podcast, Rock the Culture, and on one of our episodes, we interviewed Congressman John Lewis. And I think he said that, I've heard him say it before, but when you sit across from the man and he said it to your face, and he said, voting should be as easy as getting a glass of water. And I agree with him. So when you're any requirement, any impediments, any obligations, you making it hard on someone to participate in the fundamental element of our democracy, I'm not supportive of it, because it's in some way, shape, form, no matter how you cut it, it's discouraging, or it's going to discourage some people from participating in the process.
Listen, I think Congressman Lewis, if anyone can speak about voting in America, he does it with great credibility and has literally bled for the right to do that. So, but in terms of this, if I'm going to buy a shirt at the Gap, I have to show my driver's license to prove I am who I say that I am when I'm using a credit card. It does seem it's both politically, it's pretty sound. I think the average voter looks and thinks, you know, what are we talking about here? Why oppose something? We all have something on us at all times. We all have access to a free government ID at any moment in time. And the reality becomes this: when you look across the nation and you see how close presidential elections have been, and even the most conservative estimates say you may have upwards of 5% fraud and abuse in who votes in America and how many times they vote. Do they vote at the right place? Are they registered here or voting here? Do college students move around? I do think it's important. The integrity of the ballot box is important. I think it adds to that. And it's just a good political issue, especially for Republicans to push. And it's a tough issue for Democrats to really defend.
Well, and that brings up a question about consistency in ideas, all right? So if we want to say there needs to be ID for voting because that's how we use everything else, I mean, you can apply the same argument to what we were talking about earlier as it relates to guns. I mean, you got to have testing and proving that you can operate a vehicle. Why not the same for owning a firearm? So, I mean, if we're going to try to draw those parallels, let's draw the parallels and then make everything the same. But then when you pick and choose when you need training or need ID, and it seems to hurt a certain segment of the people more than others, that's when you get into an issue where a lot of people, especially on the center left, have problems with the requirements.
All right, so there you have it here. So, hey, look at that. We can all get along here. So, how about that there? Yeah, guys, we thank you for coming in here. We'll have to do it again.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be back if you have me back.
There you go. We'll bring him back in here. All right, for our last show of the year, we want to hear from all Arkansas lawmakers, members of government, any and all public servants. So please send in your videos sharing your 2020 New Year's resolutions. Send them to the email on your screen. You can post them on Twitter, tagging Capitol View with the hashtag ARPX2020NY resolutions. So go ahead and send those in there. All right, we'll be back here with more. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
This Fritos Chili Cheese Junior wrap is only 99 cents.
And that's a wrap.
Right, but you know the commercial's not over, right?
And that's a car.
Yep, very good.
And that's a camera.
3 for 3, good job, buddy.
That's a Fritos Chili Cheese Junior wrap while they last. Order ahead for happy hour anytime.
Hey, Arkansas. Jared Russell of Russell Honda. It's that special time of year. The holidays are here.
If you're in need of special financing, then come see us at Russell Honda. We can handle all your car lending needs. If you need a little cash this time of year, we will buy your vehicle. Not just trade-ins, we'll buy any car. So this holiday season, come see us at Russell Honda or check us out online at russellhonda.com. Family owned, family values. Oh, hi, Mom.
Driving a Russell Honda. The game of football is about pain. 7 years old until I stopped playing at 31. I thought that foot pain was going to be with me for the rest of my life. I'm so glad I met Good Feet. I'm so glad that those arch supports are in my shoes. If I had known about the Good Feet arch support earlier, I would have more than one championship. I would have 2 championship rings.
Try them for yourself with a free arch support fitting and test walk at the Good Feet store.
Come and enjoy a new experience in shopping for your home. At Aladdin Rugs and Home Decor, we have over 5,000 rugs in the latest colors and styles. Bring your pillows, your pillow shams, and sizes. We will help you select the perfect rug. We're #1 in customer service with 15,000 square feet of rugs, unique home decor, wallpaper, and flooring. Remember, buy today, take it home today, and save. Why wait?
When you need legal help, just remember 4. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm is here for you. For all your legal needs, including personal injury, bankruptcy, business law, and Social Security claims. Offices statewide for your convenience and over 25 years of dedicated service for our clients, for their legal needs. To make it easy for you, dial toll-free anywhere in the state, 877-444-4444. For the Brad Hendricks Law Firm, dial 4. We're here for you.
This Fritos Chili Cheese Junior Wrap is only 99 cents.
And that's a wrap.
Right, but you know the commercial's not over, right?
And that's a car.
Yep, very good.
And that's a camera.
3 for 3, good job, buddy.
That's a Fritos Chili Cheese Junior Wrap while they last. Order ahead for happy hour anytime.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And welcome back into Capitol View. Randy Zook from the State Chamber of Commerce joins us now. Talk about the state of economics here in Arkansas, some job stuff here. Boss, welcome in.
Thank you, Jay.
We finally got you in here. I'm excited here. Let's get into it. Jobs kind of at historic lows here. I know nationally, but also here in Arkansas.
Actually, unemployment is
that's what I meant,
yeah, unemployment's at historic lows because there are so many people working and there's so much demand for even more people. We can't satisfy the demand. We don't have enough people with the right skills in the right places to take advantage of the opportunities by the tens of thousands all across the state.
So I guess I said that backwards. It should be jobs at record highs, not record lows here. So I got things backwards here.
There you go.
I know, too, we visited a couple of weeks ago the Be Pro, Be Proud truck. I know you guys are kind of really invested in that as well. I guess what are some of the effects that we're seeing? Because I know trades are a big thing that the governor's pushing, and kind of, I think pundits in general are really starting to be like, you don't have to necessarily get a 4-year degree. You can get into some of these trades.
There are thousands of technical career opportunities that are in every sector of the economy, from healthcare to transportation to manufacturing to just food processing, you name it.
Yeah.
And there are opportunities that are going begging because we don't have enough people that have gotten that preparation to be ready for those opportunities. So the challenge is to make sure that young people, kids coming out of high school or even in the middle of whatever they're doing, make sure they know that those opportunities are there and that those opportunities are substantial for earnings potential and career opportunities.
Now, what kind of numbers have we seen in the last few years? I mean, obviously, you're saying just there's something in a lot of different fields, but I know a lot of times those manufacturing types, welding, things of that nature are kind of the focus when you think of trades and all that. But what kind of job market are we seeing with those kind of trades?
Nearly unlimited demand.
Man.
We need people who are familiar with robotics technology, with automation equipment, all kinds of computer-controlled manufacturing equipment. The governor has rightly so challenged our K-12 education system to get more kids ready for these opportunities. And the coding initiative he undertook, all of those things add up to more and more young people being prepared for better and better opportunities. So barring a big recession down the road, and there will be another recession.
Make no mistake
about that. But the good news is that the economy is strong, and it looks like it'll remain strong for some time to come. So these opportunities are there. The challenge is to get enough kids ready for them.
There you go. And I know a lot of high schools in the area are really starting to invest in some of those opportunities. What have you guys seen just from across the state?
Well, lots of major school, mostly the larger school districts are stepping up with better programs in the high school years and even junior high now, where kids can get an opportunity to learn what those careers look like and what it takes to succeed in them, and then go about getting themselves ready for that kind of work. So
I guess from an employer standpoint, I guess has that been the problem with a lot of the trade jobs? Just nobody has those skills, like you mentioned, or nobody really wants to try to invest a whole lot of time and effort. So if you've got a pool of talent that's already hip to the game, jump right in.
I think everybody gets a little bit of the blame for this crisis, if you want to call it that. The school systems weren't familiarizing kids with the opportunities. Businesses weren't in those schools selling their opportunities. But everybody's kind of rallying to this now, and I think we're going to see some really dramatic improvement across this whole area over the next several years.
All right, can't wait to see it here. Randy Zook, the State Chamber of Commerce. Again,
Thanks,
boss,
Jay.
we'll get you back in here again here when all the good stuff in 2020 pops up here.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back to wrap it up after this. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
Interstate Battery has a battery for your every need. Our friendly, knowledgeable staff is located at 2020 Landtrip Road, right off 67-167 in Sherwood. It all starts with an Interstate Battery.
Hi, I'm Missy Gibson. At John Gibson Auto Sales, we offer our customers the opportunity to buy almost any vehicle. We have over 900 cars, trucks, SUVs, motorcycles, ATVs, campers, performance trailers, and boats. We will finance your purchase in-house regardless of your credit history. You can actually make your purchase from home or on the go. Simply go online to johngibsonautosales.com and take a virtual tour of our inventory. We call it shopping made easy. See you soon at John Gibson Auto Sales, in person or online.
For over 40 years, Wayne Smith Trucking in Morrilton has given our drivers the freedom of the open road, traveling coast to coast and still coming home on weekends. So come join our team, Wayne Smith Trucking in Morrilton. Check us out online, wstrucking.com.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And for our last show of the year, heck, our last show of the decade, we want to hear from all of our Arkansas lawmakers, members of government, any and all public servants. So please send in your videos sharing your 2020 New Year's resolutions. Send them to the email you see there on your screen or post them on Twitter, tagging Capitol View with the hashtag ARPX 2020 NY resolutions. That is going to do it for us this week here. Make sure you're back here next week. We've got Governor Asa Hutchinson coming in here, so you don't want to miss that one. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.